moving ourselves forward. There was a hard-fought victory won before Judge Wendy Baxter, a victory that each and every board member participated in. I can't recount the number of sessions that we sat through Judge Baxter's courtroom to debate these issues that we debated amongst ourselves. But Judge Baxter's ruling is a victory in Wayne County Circuit Court. And anybody who's familiar with the climate in the state of Michigan and the composition of the Michigan Court of Appeals and the Michigan Supreme Court clearly recognizes, or at least would have to believe, that we will get no better decision than we got in Wayne County Circuit Court. The reality of this settlement is that it is just that. It's a settlement of a lawsuit. It is a compromise of positions, a compromise, but not over the areas where Judge Baxter was clear in her ruling. In Judge Baxter's ruling, it was clear that the board had control over academic policy. And when you look at the structure of the document, especially in paragraph 1, it clearly says that the board has control over academic policy. The second paragraph defines what academic policy and control is with respect to how we view setting academic policy. It is the role of a board to set academic policy, to set academic standards, and when we have a general superintendent, to evaluate that general superintendent based on clear metrics on whether or not they have performed their contract. It is not the responsibility of the board to micromanage a general superintendent. This document also keeps in place certain academic plans that are currently in place. What it also does is it gives this board the opportunity to change whatever plans we feel necessary to advance the best interest of children within the Detroit public schools. That is not a give back, that is a take away. This board would be remiss in its responsibility if we willy-nilly decided to eliminate all the academic programming that's currently in place. I haven't talked to one academic person who said it's in the best interest of children in this district to radically change the course of the academic day in the middle of a year. We need to study what's been put in place. We need to make decisions based on how we view academic policy within the district. And if there are things or programs that work and have been demonstrated effective, then it's up to us to keep those programs in place. If there are programs that are not effective, it's our responsibility to eliminate those programs. The issue of notification to the emergency financial manager is just that. It's a common courtesy. If we have an academic policy or plan that we want to choose, it's a common courtesy, since we're in a working relationship, that we notify him in advance of what our policy position is on a particular matter. If it doesn't impact the money, quite frankly, there's nothing he can do about it. And there's certain areas where people have raised questions, and particularly, we'll use a quarterly benchmark assessment test that are currently taking place in the district. We've heard a lot of complaints from our teachers union, from our teachers, and from our students about the level of testing that's currently being taken place, which is taking away from instructional time. We need to bring our experts in, and we do have experts who are prepared to work with us on our academic transition plan so that we can be clear in our direction as to whether or not that's the type of testing we want to have done in the district. Clearly, we need to assess whether or not our students are learning, but our quarterly benchmark assessments followed by a state standardized test, followed by the level of testing that goes on in the district. We need to make an academic policy decision as to whether or not that we want to do that. I think what's also important here is that this document gives the board the opportunity to bring on board immediately an academic liaison, a person who will work with us so that we can begin to structure and shape the programming that's going to be taking place for the next academic year. This document is not a standstill document. It's a move forward document which allows us to work with the administration so that we can begin the task of shaping the academic direction of this district. And this document allows for that. The reference to consultants in this document is just that. Mr. Bobb has hired a lot of academics. It also does not waive any rights that this board has under the revised school code. There are certain gray areas that exist with respect to the operation of an emergency financial manager and the general and the school board. And when we went to Lansing, many of us went to Lansing, it was clear that when the legislature that was more favorable than the one that currently is constituted in Lansing When the issue of clarifying the nature of the authority between a board and the emergency financial manager, the legislature punted on that issue. They did not say that it was the board's responsibility to have, to clearly manage academics, or they did not say that. And they had the opportunity to clearly make a statement last year. They didn't do that. So in my thinking, I can only speak for myself, this is a wise move on behalf of the board. It allows us to clearly define our authority over academic policy. It sets forth a framework through which the board and the emergency financial manager can begin the task of moving and advancing academic and financial success forward within the Detroit Public Schools. It's not a document that is going to make everybody happy, and I respect the sacrifice that everybody has made in this struggle. This is not a struggle by one individual or one group. This was a struggle of many people. We thank the people that showed up to City Council the 5 weeks to fight the issue of marital control. We thank the people that traveled to Lansing. This is not a document that's meant to harm the district. This is a document that, in my opinion, is meant to advance learning, academic achievement, and performance. This district is under tremendous pressure. We're fighting charters at every step of the way. We're fighting people who actually believe that we cannot govern ourselves. We're fighting amongst ourselves at times over the shape and direction. But at the end of the day, we all are still family. We all have children and relatives who attend Detroit Public Schools. It is a shame what has occurred over the last 2 years financially within this district. It's an absolute disgrace. But if we don't begin the task of moving forward as a board collectively to deal with these issues, we're going to continue to be stuck in a quagmire, which is not going to benefit our kids, which is not going to lead to stabilizing the district, which is going to lead to continued loss of students within the Detroit Public Schools. And so I, for one, am moving that we adopt this document. Though imperfect, it's a start on moving forward. And we'll entertain, I guess, comments from each board.
Call for the question.
Call for the question.
Mr. President,
okay.
Right, I wanted to make sure that the board attorney was able to speak to this recommendation.
Okay. Mr. Washington?
Yeah, I think everybody knows me. My name's George Washington, and Monica Smith and I have been attorneys for the board on this. And I want to speak in support of this settlement proposal which we're making. And I think it's very important that we look at reality here. If we look back to Montgomery, Alabama, Dr. King settled a bus boycott with the right to ride on buses. It didn't end segregation in Montgomery. It didn't do many, many things which were very important. But that triumph on that issue was of tremendous importance to the nation and really to the world. And obviously, this agreement does not have that degree of importance, but I think the principles are important. And I think Mr. Adams has indicated some of those. And let me just say, if you look at this, paragraph 1 of this proposal says, the board sets the academic policies, and Robert, Bobb, or any other financial manager has the duty to carry them out, and the only thing he can do is say we don't have enough money. That's his power. Paragraph 2. Hang on one second. Let me get back to that. Paragraph 2 defines the term academic policies as broadly as we, could do it, as we could put it in words. I think the consultation between the two, as Mr. Adams has said, frankly, as long as this financial manager is there, we're going to have to talk to him. Whatever we think about him, we are going to have to talk to him. The key things, I think, are towards the end. 3 things I would point out. Number 1, the board has the right to select the superintendent. That's not what Mr. Bobb wanted, but it is what is in this agreement. The second point, and I think it's in paragraph 10 here, which is really
Page 4,
page 4, paragraph 10, which is very important, is that once the superintendent is in place, If you can see the struck out words, Mr. Bobb wanted to have them have significant input into personnel control. And we said, no, the superintendent has to be in charge of academic personnel. If this agreement were ratified by both sides, and I'm sorry, the last thing is point, I think it's 16, which this would be entered in these words in a court order, so that if anybody violated, we could just go and get contempt against them. If this were ratified, I think what it would mean is that the board would be in charge of academic policy, the board would pick the superintendent, and the superintendent would have control over the academic people of the district. And okay, that's not a complete victory. The complete victory is getting rid of Mr. Bobb and getting money from Lansing to run the schools that we ought to have in Detroit. But in terms of a court suit, I think this would be a great step forward. And I think our big problem is not whatever deficiencies there might be in this agreement, but what kind of power do we have to force the state and Mr. Bobb to assign their name to this? Because Mr. Bobb, if you read the things that are crossed out, what he wants is a token superintendent and a token board and all of the power with him. So I think our first thing is to send the support of people for this, and that we demand this power for this board. The second thing is if we get it settled. I think all of these things, they're like treaties. They're more like treaties than they are like laws. And if you know about anything about treaties, that the minute it's signed, both sides start cheating. And what we're going to have to do is build from this, build our authority, our power. And I think the court victory was very important. I think the tremendous support that's shown among the teachers, among students, among the community in Detroit is very important. But I think this proposal, as it is an important step forward. And our problem is not going to be whatever deficiencies there are, but getting Mr. Bobb and behind him Governor Snyder to agree to this. And so I definitely support it, and I think we all have got to work very hard. Now, let me just say one other thing. If we don't get an agreement on this, we're going to be in court on February 11th, and I think the board will tell you those chairs are really hard in that courtroom, but we need everybody to come down and sit on those chairs, because that's how we won the last time. We had a lot of public support. We'll need it again, and we're going to have to try and get as much of this as we can get. But I think we've won. I think if you look at this, if this were implemented, it would be a big step forward. And for that reason, I think I certainly support it.
Call for the question.
So we adopt the settlement agreement as recommended by legal counsel.
Support.
Does that require a roll call vote?
Yes.
Roll call.
Board Member Banks?
Support.
Board Member Carter?
I was going to vote for it, but I'm going to have to say no because I wasn't able to get my question in.
Right.
Board Member Catchings?
Micromanaging.
Support.
Board Member Harada? Board Member Lemons?
Support.
Board Member Murray?
Support.
Board Member Dr. Scott? Support. Board Member Ida Short?
Support.
Board Member Javette Hawkins Williams?
Support.
Vice President Tyrone Winfrey? President Anthony Adams?
Support.
The motion carries.
Thank you.